Hello. Hello, folks. All right. Ready for our Do Less Book Club session 2? I'm on this whole new camera setup and I'm finding it a little confusing, but all right. So please say hello. Hi, Joe. Just say hello. Let me know you're here. I'm very happy to be here with you. Last week was so much fun. Hi, Jolene. Hi, Katie. Awesome. So thrilled to have you here. Last week was so much fun, our kickoff week, and I'm really excited to talk with you today about the global evidence for less, your worth, your cycles, and momentum, and the upward cycle of success. So we're going to talk through those 3 things. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Mariah. Jen, Chrissy, Amber, Madeline, hello, Jill. Thrilled you're all here. So I would love to know, did anybody have, an aha moment or something that really stuck with them from last session that they would like to share or that they applied? Like, did you have a do less moment in the last week where you managed to stop doing something or do something in a different way or take something off your plate or ask for help? Does anybody want to celebrate a do less moment? I would love that. Can everyone hear me okay? Just want to make sure you can hear me okay. Let me know. Maybe you can't hear me. Hold on. Let me see. Can you hear me? Ooh, uh-oh. Okay, I think we have an audio problem. Hold on. Oh, you can. Okay. Oh, Jill has had the gravity song from Wicked in my head since the gravity exercise. I love that. That's so great. Katie is taking less responsibility for everything and just taking some of it on. So good. That's brilliant. Oops. Awesome. That's great. I love hearing your do less success stories. Do less success. Okay. Oh, we just have a delay. I see. Yes, that makes sense. Okay. All right. Amazing. So I love those do less successes. If anybody else wants to share a do less success, I would love it. It's very, very, very important that we acknowledge what is working, especially in this time when things are really intense. It can be easy to let ourselves get sucked into the abyss of negativity and fear and drama in the world. But I want to be a different place right now. And I'm going to be the invitation to celebrate what's working. So this place, this space, this group is a place to, of course, feel your feelings and be honest about where you are, because I certainly am not a believer in sweeping things under the rug or the spiritual bypass. But I also believe that we need more places that feel good. And that feeling good is the whole darn point. And so practicing celebrating what's working, even in the midst of a global pandemic, even in the midst of this economic travesty that we have going on, even with the healthcare workers, like all of that, right? We have this belief that it's not okay to be joyful even when there's something in the world going on that's hard or awful. But I will tell you what, limiting your joy, limiting your celebration, limiting your ability, the amount you will allow yourself to feel good does not help anyone. In fact, it brings the whole planet's vibration down. So it is not our job. We cannot help anyone by suffering. Our suffering does not help somebody else to not suffer. But our joy and our celebration may be a possibility for them, an invitation for them to come out of what they're currently experiencing. So, okay. All right. So Julia used the gravity exercise a couple of times and she really loved that. So great. Okay. Heather said, I was driving across the U.S. for a military move, and when I got overwhelmed driving this huge Penske truck, I made my husband drive ASAP. That's awesome. Katie wants to see my sweatshirt. It is a sweatshirt that says do less. It is made by a company called Mother, believe it or not. And I bought it from Nordstrom. Maybe someday I'll make my own, but that is where I got this sweatshirt and I really love it. So I wore it for you all today. Okay, great. Smadar says, I love that. That was a tough thing for me to get through my head that by suffering, I'm not helping anyone. Yeah. Does that, is that hard for anybody? Is anyone like, you're wrong, my suffering does help somebody? I'm happy to talk about it. But my belief and my invitation to you, if you want to take this on, is that our joy actually helps people. Our pleasure actually helps the world. Our light helps the world, as does being willing to feel our darkness. It's not one or the other, but I think in the world, we have a tendency to value pain and suffering and to have a negativity bias. And think that joy and happiness are frivolous and irresponsible in certain ways. And so I just want to say, I don't believe that. All right. Great. So Claire was tracking her cycle in the last week. I love that. Jordanka, I'm happy that you're here. We're going to get you some basic tips to start to do less. Okay, great. And yeah, Julia is sharing the Abraham Hicks quote, which I love. You can't make yourself sick enough to make someone well. Beautiful. Okay. And Jeannie is saying, it's almost like if I don't worry about something, I won't be prepared for the worst case scenario. Well, Jeannie, I think that we're in a moment right now that's a great example of like, none of us could have possibly have been prepared for this. And had we worried about it and thought about it ahead of time, yeah, maybe we could have had some more savings, right? But beyond doing a few prudent things like taking care of your health, drinking water, eating vegetables, and having savings, and making sure that your documents are in order, like your will and stuff like that, there's not that much else we can do to really be prepared, because life will throw at us all sorts of things. And the amount of worrying we do about something never changes the outcome. So I think that that's, just noticing worry. And I believe that worry may very well be a trauma response, because it kind of gives us this feeling that we're doing something. And many times I think what we really need to be doing is surrendering. And this particular time is such a great opportunity to surrender, because we have no idea when this pandemic is going to be over, and we have no idea when we're going to be able to be back out in the world. And so it's a very weird moment, but it's also this great opportunity to be like, oh, well, this is my life now. I can either push up against it and worry about it, or I can surrender and say, well, this is my life now. So how am I going to live it? And I don't know how long this is going to go on. So I might as well really just like embrace what's happening here to make sure I don't miss the gifts. Because when we're always worrying about what's coming next, or we are always thinking about the future or thinking about the past, we miss what's happening right now, and we miss the gift. And we're going to talk about that today with the upward cycle of success, and how we can make sure we don't miss the gift in this moment right now. All right. Okay. Molly says, I get stuck in the, well, I could be living somewhere without running water and strap my child to my back to work in a mine, so my pain isn't that bad. Yeah, Molly, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I do think that there's like two sides to this coin, right? That our suffering is not going to help anybody, right? We can't get sick enough to help sick people. But at the same time, invalidating ourselves or invalidating others and saying it could be so much worse, I don't actually believe is like the healthiest response. In fact, somebody did that to me the other day, and because I was really crawling out of my skin with the girls, and I was just having a hard time with the early weeks of the quarantine. And she said to me, well, imagine, if you had a kid home with special needs all of a sudden, and all the services you had at school weren't available, and suddenly you were trying to work with this child. And I said, well, that would be really hard. And when you respond to me having a hard time with a comment like that about how much worse it could be, it feels really invalidating. And right now, what I really need is just to feel how I feel, not negate what I feel because it's not as bad as what somebody else could be experiencing. And I was really proud of myself for just saying that in the moment. And it felt really good to just honor, like, I really need to just be how I am right now. And please don't like try to fix it. Please don't invalidate my experience, because it could be worse. It could always be worse. It could always be worse, but that doesn't mean you don't get to also feel pain. But I just don't want you to suppress your joy because you think that feeling joy right now or feeling happiness is somehow insensitive or going to make it worse for people who are suffering, right? Like, our joy does not make other people's suffering worse. There's not a limited amount of joy to be experienced on the planet. And our joy doesn't take away from somebody else's ability to feel joy. In fact, it expands the capacity for the whole planet to feel joy. Okay. So many comments. Okie dokie. I'm just kind of going to do a quick read through. Okay. All right. Natalie says, after reading the Do Less book, I realized how much I was stuck in doing, worrying, and forcing to justify my value, my added value. It was a big revelation. Love that. Christy said, the reading on cyclical time and abundance mindset and the cycle of creativity has sparked my creativity during this time. It was already happening, and then your book put words to that natural process. Great. Okay. All right. Awesome. Elizabeth is saying, this is just such an important thing to talk about. It's only in the last year or so that I realized that we really grew up in a household where it was always said it could be worse, just be grateful. And that was damaging. Yeah, it's actually really traumatic to always be told it could be worse, because then it's saying it's sort of a form of gaslighting, and basically saying, like, what you think you're experiencing, you're not actually experiencing. And that's very traumatic for a child. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to dive into what we're talking about today. I was working on an article that I'm so excited about. It's coming out in the Harvard Business Review in a couple of weeks, about how to decide and determine what to stop doing. And specifically geared for working parents. And so I was reviewing the global evidence for doing less in Do Less, which is in chapter 1. No worries if you didn't do the reading. This is not a course. You're not getting graded. You're doing it perfectly. And if you want to do this whole book club and never read the book, I honor you and I support you. So I'm going to go over some of the highlights from each of the sections. So I'll go over a couple of the highlights from the chapter, and then we'll go back and forth and do a Q&A and so forth for each of the 3 chapters. We'll do each one for about 15 minutes. Okay, so the global evidence for doing less, I was just so reminded on the power of how much we as a culture identify with being busy, and we wear busyness as a badge of honor. And we have this belief that if we want better results, we have to do more things. So we have this obsession with addition. We think that the way to create more effectiveness, more productivity, more joy, more results, more achievement, more pleasure, more satisfaction is always through addition. So I'll need to add more tasks. I'll need to add in more hours, whatever it is. And so I just wanted to say that basically the average person working full time in the United States works 47 hours a week, and for people who work 49 hours a week, so just 2 more hours a week than the average, there's an associated increase in mental health issues. So people working just 2 hours more than the average have an associated increase in mental health issues, and this is much more significant in women. Okay. The other thing, and this was written about by Dr. Travis Bradbury, who is the co-author of Emotional Intelligence. He wrote, experiencing stress, oftentimes from being too busy and overworking, actually makes it more difficult to deal with future stress, because it diminishes your ability to take control of the situation, manage your stress, and keep things from getting out of control. A vicious cycle if there ever was one. So being stressed out actually leads to poorer stress management with stressful situations in the future. So we're essentially when we overwork, when we do too many things, when we don't ask for support, when we are wearing our busyness as a badge of honor, when we are being martyrs, when we engage in this sort of toxic behavior, we are actually robbing our future self of our stress management ability. And so stress begets stress, begets stress, begets stress. And stress is linked to every single chronic degenerative disease and a weakened immune system. So it makes you much more susceptible to not only degenerative disease, but also infectious disease. So it really does a number on our health. So in the Harvard Business Review, they actually cited some data that really very few people can be in a state of high concentration on things that really move the needle forward, like writing about new ideas, for more than 4 to 5 hours a day. And this is true even amongst high performers like athletes, novelists, and musicians. And that's actually really high because the average executives and managers are only spending about 2 hours a day on things that really move the needle forward. But David Rock, the author of Your Brain at Work, actually found that we're truly focused on our work, like truly in a state of flow. If you know Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi's work in his book Flow, there's this state of being simultaneously challenged, but also in kind of like in your creative groove. So it's like you're being challenged, but you're also doing what you really love and what you're really good at. And it's this incredible intersection where you get into a state of flow and where you forget that time exists. It's full presence flow. Super, super beautiful to experience that. I would love to hear, I would love to hear from anybody if you have experienced a state of flow. What were you doing during that time? Just let us know in the comments, because I'm very fascinated by this concept of flow. Because really what being in a flow state is being optimally productive and being optimally present. And it's a form of time bending. Because when we're in a state of flow, we don't even know that time has gone by. Like it could have been 5 minutes. It could have been 5 hours. We don't know. and it doesn't matter because we're just there. We're just in it. I sometimes get into that when I'm writing. Recently, I've been doing this workout called the class, and I am getting into that state in the class. It's really fun. Jolene gets into flow doing graphic design. Shilpi making art. Christy writing or drawing. Sky making art, doing research. Smadar writing or painting. Sarah says, as an OT, I'm often helping people get into flow activities. During this pandemic, baking bread is flow for me and lots of others. Totally. Jo experiences flow when she's researching for a paper. Shilpi, dancing. Amy, washing dishes and rocking babies. I love that. And Amy, I want to say from the research that I've done on the nervous system, rhythmic activities like rocking and like washing, kind of that repetitive activity, that's actually incredibly healing to our nervous system. So there might be a state of flow there, but there may also be an element where your nervous system is being switched into rest and restore because of the rhythmic continuous activity. And so just wanted to point that out because it's kind of cool. Aditi, when I'm writing and getting into a state of flow and yoga. Jen, organizing or cooking. Jill, coding. I love it. Ava, creative work or DIY projects. Madeline, teaching children. Oh, so beautiful. Katie, making cards and listening to an audiobook. Elizabeth, I find it difficult to hit flow working at home with my kids. You and me both, sister. This is for the birds. So yeah, like I'm not saying that we should be experiencing flow right now if we're home with our children while trying to work, but it'll be something to look forward to after this pandemic has transformed into whatever it is wanting to transform into. This is great. I just love all these examples of flow. Painting a teapot, fine detail, cooking, sewing, in the shower, writing. So good. Okay, great. So really thinking about that state of flow, what's so interesting is that David Rock, again, author of Your Brain at Work, found that we're truly focused and really in that state of flow with our work a mere 6 hours per week. 6 hours per week, we're like really in the groove doing our best work. And this is largely because the average worker in an office gets interrupted every 3 to 10 minutes, and it can take from 5 to 25 minutes to get refocused on what we were doing. Now, for those of us working from home, our coworkers might be our children or our cat or our spouse or, somebody else who might also be interrupting us. But I read some interesting data that came out of a 2-year study out of Stanford that showed that people who work from home are significantly more productive than people who work in an office. Now, of course, this is, I don't think they added the no childcare situation into this study, but it is because, largely because there are far fewer unnecessary meetings. And also there's not that constant interruption. And then there's also not workplace drama and all the politics. And people are absent way less often and they get their work done more quickly. So the thing is, though, that we ascribe to this 40-hour work week, and it's arbitrary. It was created around the Industrial Revolution, and it had to do with labor unions and work laws. Because prior to the 40-hour work week, people working in factories were working like 12 hours. There was child labor. I mean, it was a mess. And so these laws got passed for the 40-hour work week actually to protect workers from overworking. But what's so interesting is that based on some of this interesting data and people experimenting around the world, what we're finding is that people on average actually are only productive, meaning doing work, not just like screwing around or being distracted or zoning out on social media or whatever. like 24 to max 32 hours a week, even if they're a full-time worker. And so places like this company called Philemundus in Sweden are actually trying out a 6-hour workday. So a 30-hour work week. Another company called Basecamp has a 32-hour work week from May to October. And another company called Perpetual Guardian in New Zealand also went down to a 4-day work week, which is like 32 hours. And what these companies are finding is that people they're not having any problem with productivity. And in fact, people's health is better, which means fewer sick days. There's less office drama. There are far fewer distractions like social media and texting and things like that. And there are fewer unnecessary meetings. So people are just able to like show up, get their work done. And there's something about the condensed time that allows people to be so much more effective in the limited time. And I think a lot of us might also be experiencing that very same thing. So I really wanted to share some of that data because what we're seeing is that this whole idea that a quality work week is 40 hours or more is just not based on evidence. It's based on labor laws from the turn of the century. And we've just not updated it. So it's time for an update, and it's time for an update based on the data. And this moment that we're in right now, where our relationship with work and time and the outer world is really all up for reassessment, is actually the perfect time for us to begin to look at, okay, what is my relationship with time and work? Am I just logging in the hours to be a good girl, to show up, to have to log butt in seat hours? Or am I putting in the time because I'm getting great results, not only quantitatively, but from a joy and fulfillment perspective? All right, so I'm going to just go through the comments. We'll talk about this data a little bit, and then we're going to move on. Ashton says she's definitely found that she's more productive working from home. And Jen says, I wonder if East Coast corporations' work culture might shift to let more people work from home when this is eased up. I think it's going to be really interesting to see, Jen, how companies reassess now that everyone's been working from home, or a lot of people have been working from home, to be able to give people more flexibility and more autonomy after. I even hate to say after this thing is all over, because I don't personally believe that we're going back to normal. I believe that we are going to move forward into a new paradigm. And I think that this conversation that we're having right now about work and about our relationship with time and productivity is central to the larger global conversation around how we're going to be in commerce and in community together when the pandemic is handled. Okay. Jen says she's moving to Sweden. I love that, Jen. You might want to increase your vitamin D supplementation if you do that. All right. So Caroline says that the normal work week is 40 hours in Sweden too. And I was just referring to a company called Philemundus, which is a Stockholm-based app development company that's trying this out. I did find some data that Sweden is moving towards a 4-hour work week, 4-day work week. However, I've since heard from many people who live in Sweden, and they're like, I don't know where you heard that, because that's totally not true. So I do apologize I didn't mean to put misleading information in my book. That is what I had found and researched, but a few more anecdotal conversations have indicated that that's not the truth. But these companies, Philemundus, Basecamp, and Perpetual Guardian, are all doing this, and they are having success. Mary Jen is saying, are people also happier at home, therefore more productive? I think some people, Mary Jen, I think that that's going to differ depending on people's circumstances for sure. But I think, certainly just having the freedom to wear what you want and, just have your own food and not have to do the commute and all of that, I think could certainly add to well-being. All right. Stephanie says, what do you recommend for those of us who have jobs where we are unable to work from home? I'm a dental hygienist and I'm laid off for the time being, but we're going to be going back to work once this all eases up. I love that question, Stephanie. And it's a really important one because obviously healthcare workers, hairstylists, there are so many people who work hourly. It's just a different paradigm than getting a result. But I do think that, Stephanie, for you, in your current line of work as a dental hygienist, and for anyone else who this applies to, really still thinking about the energetics of your relationship with time and work. And even though there's not like a result, like, oh, I was able to get that report done in 3 hours instead of 6 hours, right? Because you are working with people and their teeth. And so, of course, I'm sure your office looks at efficiency and how many patients you're seeing a day and lag time and use of rooms and all of that. And I think that's an incredibly important conversation to have. But also for you personally, just really looking at, okay, how many hours, just notice, like, how many hours working feels really good to you? And then at what point is there this sort of diminishing rate of return where possibly fatigue sets in and the joy starts to go away? Like, what's that moment for you? Because I think for all of us, it happens, right? Like, I'll get to a point where I'm just like cruising along with my work and I'm having the greatest time and I love my work, but then there's this moment sometimes where I'm just like, oh my God, it's too much. Like I just crossed over the threshold. And so for you, Stephanie, and others, I think it's really important for us all to just begin to be in relationship with our own internal experience. So rather than being in relationship with an external clock or with our boss's external expectations or with society's external expectations, I think the invitation in this moment when we're being asked to pause is, how can I build a deeper relationship with my internal experience? And how can I let that inform my work choices going forward? And that might mean that some people end up going down hours. It might mean a conversation with your practice about how things are done from an hour perspective. I don't know, but I think it's an important time to be asking those questions. Okay. Sarah says, in a way, it's too bad that society is trying working at home when we have no childcare. I always work from home and I'm usually way more efficient. It's so true, Sarah. Like I work from home and this is nuts. I'm just working, instead of having 8 or 9 hours a day to myself, I have like 3 or 4 hours a day. And I am getting way more efficient in certain ways. And I'm getting much more ruthless about what I will and will not say yes to. And I was already pretty ruthless about that, but now it's like on steroids. And I think that's great for all of us, but you're totally right. I don't think this time is going to be great data to be able to say, look at how efficient I was, look at how productive I was, to companies. Jennifer is just sharing that she's a nurse and she has gone from working 5 days a week to working 3 to 4 days a week. And for her, that made a huge difference. Okay, Mia is saying, I live and breathe by this concept since reading your book, and yet I still wonder about entrepreneurs and starting a business. In the beginning, you don't have a team and not many people to delegate tasks to. How do you think these people can adapt to the do less concept when in the midst of getting a startup going? Great question. So in the midst of getting a startup going, there is a tendency to think we have to master social media and blogging and have the most perfect funnels and be doing all the Facebook ads and be running webinars and an online challenge and a free Facebook group and Pinterest and like doing, those are just examples from my industry. And there's this tendency to think that like, if we're not doing all the things, we're not doing enough. And my recommendation for startups is actually the same as for larger companies, which is look at what's actually getting you results and do more of that. I would much rather you mastered one marketing strategy that gets people in the door and didn't even touch the other ones, because we cannot be good at all the things. We certainly can't put our attention on all the things. So it's choosing one thing or two things that you're going to go all in on until you get a result, versus trying 25 different things all at the same time. And you will get better results from the one or two things that you go all in on than from trying like 25 different things and doing half-assed. So that's my recommendation. Okay. Aditi says, I have been amazed by how much I feel there is still to do, even during the restrictions that have been imposed on all of us, with variations depending on where we live due to COVID. It has really made me introspect and reflect on how much my worth is tied to what I do versus who I am. Aditi, I love that you're taking this invitation to do that reflection, and I know that you're not alone in that. Okay. Jennifer is just saying that she did take a pay cut as a nurse, but decided to take a pay cut for a health raise. I love that. I love that. Okay. And if you're wondering, like, okay, so I'm a startup, how do I know what's bringing in results or not? Well, you can look at micro results, right? So like in my business, we need email subscribers, and then we need email subscribers to convert into buyers of things. Like that's our metric of success. Like we know if we have email subscribers who are purchasing our offerings, that's one of our metrics. And so we have something called a scorecard, which was inspired by the book Traction. And each week we fill in our metrics of list growth, social media numbers, which posts and which Instagram stories are doing the best on Instagram, which posts are doing the best on Facebook, number of origin members, number of canceled origin members, our retention rate, podcast downloads. So we look at these metrics and then we're able to see, oh, that campaign we ran, look, all our numbers went up. It's working. Versus like, oh, we did this whole thing and our numbers didn't go up. Well, it's probably not working. So then we're not getting a year into a campaign, to a strategy, and realizing like, oh, that didn't work. At this point, it's like the feedback loop is so much quicker because we do those metrics every Monday for our team meeting. So we're getting feedback really, really quickly. So my recommendation is to be tracking your metrics week over week, like in a Google spreadsheet, so that you can look at what is moving the needle and you can stop doing what's not working, or you can tweak what's not working, so that you're not just flying blind. Okay. Great. So I'm going to move on. And I do see some questions, but I really want to get into the next section, which is your worth, your cycles, and momentum. So the thing is, as a culture, we celebrate, and what's honored is outward, visible energy and productivity. So we really love to celebrate the traditional qualities of the masculine, which are productive, linear, analytical, aggressive, logical, competitive, results-oriented, win-lose mentality, doing over being, structure, being outward, individualism, and me. So those are the qualities of the traditional masculine. Keep in mind, this is not gendered. This is not men versus women. There's two energies in the world. There's a lot of different energy in the world, but typically schools of thought consider these the qualities of masculine energy. And even in same-sex couples, there is a polarity between, the yin and the yang, the masculine and the feminine. And I personally, as a cisgender woman, I identify as female. However, I have a lot of masculine energy. And so just like, I just really want to be clear that this is not about men versus women. Okay. Traditional qualities of the feminine: nurturing, intuitive, cyclical, looks for win-win scenarios, emotional, process-oriented, being, overdoing, flow, inward, receptive, community, we. So in our culture, we are hyper identified with the masculine as good. And the qualities of the feminine are seen more as bad. And so what's really interesting in this moment that we're in right now is we are being asked to go inside, right? Literally and metaphorically. We are being asked to slow down, sort of forced to slow down and be more as opposed to do more. And I think this is an opportunity culturally where we can begin to consider we over me and community as opposed to individualism. So how do my choices affect the collective? Not just how do my choices affect me and my family, right? As opposed to this is about me trying to get ahead. Could it also be about me wanting to uplift those in my community and those in the collective? And so we have to really notice that when we say, for example, so as women who have periods, or people who have periods, it's important to know that we are very cyclical in a different way than men. And that is that we cycle every 28-ish days. Now it's going to be different from cycle to cycle. Sometimes it's going to be different for different women. But a hormonal cycle of a cisgender man will be a 24 hours versus the hormonal cycle of a cisgender woman will be 28 days, give or take. Our whole world is set up, of course, on a 24-hour structure. And it's totally normal and accepted that people get a little dip in the afternoon and they're tired and sleeping at night, right? So in a 24-hour cycle, that just makes sense. But in a 28-day cycle, there's literally half of the cycle, whereas women, we feel more inward. So the luteal phase and the menstrual phase. So from days about 17, let's say from day 17 of your cycle through day 5 of your cycle, if you have a 5-day period, if you have 5-day menstruation. So for like a full half of your cycle, your energy tends to be more inward, more kind of like in that, just like a more inward, slowed down, introspective, more being place. And then the other half of the cycle is your follicular phase and ovulation, which is from days let's say 6 of your cycle through day 17, 18, somewhere in there. So meaning the day your period ends is when you are more in this outward energy. For me, actually, I noticed that on day 3 of my cycle, even though I'm still bleeding, I kind of switch into this more outward energy. So for me, it's like day 3 to usually about day 20, I'm pretty outward. And then from day about 20 to day, 2 or 3, I'm more inward. But it's really important to know, women, I hear us say this all the time. Well, I feel like myself, or I feel good these days, right? Because what we've been taught is good is outward, is high energy, is productive, is results oriented. That's good. Bad is inward, lower energy, less social, more reflective. That's bad. Process oriented, bad. So we say to ourselves, oh, I'm myself when I'm more in the masculine energy, but I don't feel good when I'm more in this inward, the other half of the cycle. And by the way, if you don't have a period, the moon does this same energetic pull on all of us. And there's some really interesting data that I write about in the book about how the moon affects us. So the new moon The new moon and waning moon phases are more that inward energy, and the waxing moon and full moon phases are more that outward energy. So all of us are having this ebb and flow. But it's really important just to notice how we have taken on the language of the patriarchy. And the language of the patriarchy is masculine is good, feminine is bad. And so we say that about ourselves regarding our cyclical nature. And my invitation to you is to own that all phases of your being, all phases of your cyclical nature, all ways that you feel are beautiful, are valuable. And they're just valuable in different ways than we've been taught. So some of it is valuable because you're high energy and you're getting a lot done. Some of it is valuable because you're getting a lot of really great wisdom and healing and rest and recuperation. Some of it is really valuable because things are rising to the surface that you need to look at, and now's the opportunity. But I really would invite you to get out of this binary of outward, high energy, positive means good, and inward, more introspective, more reflective, more emotional, bad. And to say all of the way I feel throughout the month, whether it's in sync with my menstrual cycle or in sync with the moon, all of it is good. All of it is me. And there are gifts in all of it. And I'll just touch briefly on chapter 3, which is the upward cycle of success, to say that these 4 phases that I just mentioned, menstrual, follicular, ovulation, and luteal, all mimic the 4 phases, the 4 seasons on planet Earth. And I talk about this a lot in something I call There's a Cycle for Everything, which is part of the Origin membership. And it's also part of a program that we have called Make Time for Business. So this, and by the way, if you see one of my like Facebook or Instagram ads running, you can get that video, There's a Cycle for Everything, for free. So you can just opt in and get that with the diagram, and it shows you. Do I have it in the book? I don't think I have it in the book, but it is in the first page of the Do Less Planner, the digital and the physical. It's right here. That's what the graphic looks like. But it just shows you, and in this moment right now, and I have a video, I did a Hay House, an Instagram live on the Hay House Instagram channel last night. And I talked about how we're in this moment historically, globally, of a collective wintertime energy that I call the fertile void, in reference to the upward cycle of success. And the upward cycle of success is really applying these four phases, these 4 seasons, this seasonal energy, this cyclical energy to our creativity and to larger energetic cycles. And right now, as a planet, we are in a larger energetic cycle, and certainly within the United States, of a fertile void, of a wintertime energy, where we're being asked to rest and restore and reflect. If we are choosing to take that invitation, we are being asked to do less. We are being asked to slow down. And the gifts here, if we pay attention, if we honor this time, I believe the gift is renewal and new paradigms for new ways of commerce, new ways of taking care of the earth, new ways of taking care of each other, new ways of looking at time and work and money that are so, so needed. There are so many systems that are toxic that need to either collapse or be rebuilt or rewired. And so this moment is highlighting like our healthcare system, how messed up that is, some of the things in our political system. And if we collectively as humans say yes to embracing the darkness, say yes to embracing the part of the cycle that we're in as humanity in the upward cycle of success, and the part of the cycle that we're in is the fertile void. It's asking us to rest, to reflect, to go within. And if we do this, I really do believe that we all can be part of this healing that we all need. So that was a lot. I'm going to go back into the comments a little bit here, and I'm not going to go through all of the cycles of the upward cycle of success because I really want to get into the comments. And I'm going to have to hop off in a couple of minutes. But I just kind of wanted to breeze through here and see what we had. Okay, let's see. So we've got a lot of folks chatting with each other, which I love. That's so great. Okay, so Julia says, could you please break down the days of the cycle with the phases of the cycle? I'm curious about ovulation phase since ovulation itself is only a couple days. Great question, Julia. So you ovulate, let's say on day 14-ish of your cycle, assuming that you start bleeding on day 1. Day 14-ish is the day you would ovulate. Now, of course, you would only really know if you're ovulating if you use one of those pee sticks or if you're taking your temperature, or there's some other methodologies here, but let's just pretend it's day 14. The 2 days before you ovulate and the 2 days after you ovulate are still kind of that ovulation energy. So kind of like feeling like that feeling of being more sexy, more turned on, more magnetic. That's kind of ovulation. Days for many women, let's say like day 6 through 11 of their cycle would be the follicular phase, which is kind of high energy, new beginnings, initiation energy. And then day, let's say 17 through 28-ish would be the luteal phase for many women. The luteal phase is 10 to 14 days. And I do recommend using a menstrual tracking app. Now, your menstrual tracking app doesn't actually know what's going on inside your body, but it's a good approximation. And I really like the Clue app. I also just found one called Stardust. And there's also MyFlow. So I actually use all 3 of those. I am going to make one of my own, but we're not there yet. So, okay. Yeah, so GR, you were talking about your period not correlating with the moon. Yes, your period does not need to correlate with the moon. I tend to bleed on the full moon. So I'm what's called a red moon witch. For those who also bleed closer to the full moon as opposed to the new moon, it often means that we take our own inner work, we take our own darkness and alchemy of our shadow, and we use that for the world. So it's common that teachers, people kind of in the spiritual teaching world will actually be full moon bleeders as opposed to new moon bleeders who would be more using that dark energy of the moon to nourish. It's more of an inward experience. And you may shift in different times of your life. So the goal here is not to get your menstrual cycle synced up with the moon. You certainly could make that a goal, but it's not my goal. Okay, great. Just double checking here. Oh, Aditi is eagerly awaiting the Do Less Planner. It's in Singapore, the country that I moved from just before the pandemic spread here to Switzerland. I can hardly wait to get it started planning cyclically. Well, Aditi, in the meantime, we have tons of people who are loving their digital Do Less Planner. You can print out the pages. You can use it as a fillable PDF on your computer, or you can use it with with your stylus, with the OneNote app on your iPad. So just to consider that. Okay. Mary Jen, I'm not going to list the qualities again because they're right in the book. They're on page 12. So if you wanted that list of traditional qualities of the masculine and the feminine, as identified by our culture, it's on page 12 of the paperback version of Do Less. Okay. Diana, if you're postmenopausal, your hormones will not be doing this, and you're going to be more synced up energetically with the moon. So that's really such a beautiful opportunity. Okay, great. Oh, and it's on page 11 of the original book. Thank you. That feminine masculine. All right. So I am so excited. Next week, we are going to dive into egg wisdom. So egg wisdom is our biological blueprint for manifesting. So next week, we're going to do egg wisdom, and we're going to dive into the experiments. We're going to talk about experiment number 1, which is track your cycle in the moon. I think we did a pretty good job covering that today, so we're not going to get super, super in depth with it. And then experiment number 2 is discover what really matters to you. And I think a lot of us are getting some insight on this right now that's super powerful. And then we'll see how far we get. But experiment 3 is about listening to your body. So we may also dive into that next week. So thank you all so much. It's such a pleasure to be with you always. I can't wait to be with you again next week. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. Bye.